On today's hot sheet, I'm discussing Elizabeth Warren's letter to Jerome Powell and house price indices from Case-Shiller and FHFA. Today is Tuesday, January 30th, 2024. I am Byron Lazine, and the hot sheet starts now. All right, here we go on this Tuesday. Let me know in the live chat which market you are tuning in live from and what timing here on Elizabeth Warren's part. Senator Elizabeth Warren sending a letter to Jerome Powell, of course, the week of the FOMC meeting. They're meeting today and tomorrow. Press conference scheduled for tomorrow afternoon. As always, we will cover all of it on Thursday morning. So we don't get into politics here on the hot sheet, but when politicians touch on housing, we certainly do cover it and break it down. And I will say this about Senator Elizabeth Warren. She's one of the few politicians who consistently will bring up housing and specifically housing affordability, not only when it's convenient for her. I wouldn't call this convenient timing. This is smart timing on Elizabeth Warren's part to send this letter this week, yesterday, late in the day before this FOMC meeting, or yesterday, late in the day, I guess, is when it was reported. The letter could have, I don't know if the FOMC committee received this last week or whatever, but this is when the news broke, was late yesterday, early this morning, on Senator Warren's letter to Jerome Powell, which we will break down. But she is one of the few who will bring this up over and over and over again, where I tend to see most, people on Capitol Hill and in DC, politicians, they'll bring up housing as like an afterthought. Only they'll drop that in there if it's the right hearing, convenient soundbite to make it sound like they care. Really, nobody does anything ever to help housing affordability. I mean, it ultimately is, a market problem. But there's a lot of regulations and restrictions on builders and on getting affordable housing built. So, you ease those regulations and restrictions, you could argue that we'd have more affordable housing. But what does Elizabeth Warren, as well as 3 other Democratic lawmakers, say in this letter to Jerome Powell? All right, we've got an article here on nowbam.com, so you can read all of it. Of course, we'll have the hot sheet show notes, as well as the original letter. I'll show you the original letter, all linked up inside of BAM X. The letter mentions that Federal Reserve's aggressive rate hikes have resulted in mortgage rates reaching 20-year highs in the past year. They highlighted that the rapid and high rate hikes by the Fed have led to increased costs for home purchasers, higher rents, and reduced new home apartment construction, along with job growth. All right, let's break that down there for just a second. Increased costs for home purchases. Of course, the rate hikes have contributed the most to an increased cost in home purchases. Higher rents. Actually, we've seen rents over the last 12 months coming down month over month, even going into the negatives. I'm not saying that the higher rates have resulted in lower rents. There's a combination of the supply that's been introduced into the multifamily market, as well as that cost of owning has subdued rising rents. So rents are high. They're always high. They're always going up, but it is less, it's more affordable rather to rent than it is to buy. Reduce new home and apartment construction. I mean, we're at an all-time high on apartment construction. So that would be just not an accurate statement there. And then along with job growth, this is the one I think that not enough politicians talk about, right? And so I'm glad that Warren and the 3 other lawmakers in their letter brought this up. While we have a strong job economy, when you do that, when you break the housing market, when you put housing into recession, like Jerome Powell did last year, a goal of his, it was a feather in his cap. How many people does that impact? It doesn't impact just, home buyers and home sellers. And, home sellers were not really impacted unless they needed to buy on the other end. It doesn't just impact real estate agents, it impacts that inspector, and it certainly impacted the mortgage lender, the entire mortgage industry. It impacts appraisers. It impacts local furniture stores, big box furniture stores, home and garden centers, contractors. It impacts a significant, remember, housing is about a fifth of total GDP. So it impacts a lot of families, a lot of, working class here in America. So I'm glad that they highlighted that. That certainly is an issue here with these rates. The Fed's decision to raise interest rates rapidly, keep them high, has resulted in higher costs. Here's the quote that I was breaking down. Home purchasers agree. Higher rents don't necessarily agree because the results have not resulted in higher rates. They've actually resulted in rents, rather they've resulted in lowering rents. Reductions in new home and apartment building. We've got a little less new home building, but that's still pretty strong in comparison when you look back over the last 10 years. And that's because of the inventory opportunity. Apartment building is at an all-time high. So that's just inaccurate data there. Job growth is definitely a big one. So they're requesting a rate reduction. They're urging Chair Powell to consider the effects of the interest rate decisions in the housing market to reverse these astronomical rates. Reverse them means start the cutting now. This has made affordable housing inaccessible to many, these astronomical rates. It is one of, when we hit 8%, that was, some were claiming, the most unaffordable time ever, certainly in the last 50 years. When we hit 8% on the interest rate in October, you had the most unaffordable housing market in at least 50 years. So staggering numbers, certainly to back up that claim in this letter. Now, what will happen when the interest rate does drop? If the Fed starts cutting rates in the 30-year fixed rate, because this is what, Jerome Powell can only drop the Fed target rate, and then, likely the 30 rate will follow that. Well, you will certainly have more buyers in the market. The current home prices will be accessible to more. Okay. So that, what they're saying in this letter is the astronomical rates have made housing inaccessible to many because of the affordability issue. So the current prices will certainly be accessible to more, but is that going to increase inventory? Without an increase in inventory, without an increase in supply, and you have this new rush of demand, there's many that believe when the rates go down, you're going to have another boom in prices, almost erasing that newfound affordability with the rates. I actually heard Grant Cardone give a pretty good analysis of this. Whether you like Grant Cardone or not, listen to this. His thought is that if rates come down to 5%, you're going to have all these, people that were locked in, would-be sellers who want to sell but also buy, come to the market. Everybody kind of instantly floods that's been thinking about selling. This pent-up selling demand floods the market. Okay, so now you have all this new inventory. You also have a whole new category of buyers. The rate coming down has made accessible for more buyers. So you've got all this inventory and this new pool of buyers. Grant's thesis is that prices actually get stunned for a little bit, or even drop momentarily, with everybody trying to figure out the new dynamics of the market. And then, once that whole entire pool actually does come to market, these buyers, you see prices after maybe a short period, maybe 3 months. I don't think he put a timeline on it, but he was referring to a very short period of a stunting in prices, maybe even a slight drop. And then prices just absolutely skyrocket back up because of all of the demand on the supply. Okay. So that's Grant's thesis. There's enough, not pointing to him as somebody who knows exactly what's going to happen. Nobody does. But there's enough analysts out here that have been doing this a long time that do believe you get these rates down to 5, you're going to have another boom on pricing. So I see where the heart is in the letter on, and I'm with Elizabeth Warren and these three other lawmakers, where it's like, let's get rates lower because we need more fluidity into the market. Talking about jobs, talking about the industry that is real estate. If we get back up to 5 million existing home sales, wow, that's a lot more opportunity for everybody. It does create obviously more inventory, likely. We get some of these people out of this lockout effect, but does it actually solve affordability? I have a lot of questions around that. And this is where I have a lot of questions with a lot of the mindset coming out of DC when it relates to fixing the housing problem. They never address more inventory. You increase supply dramatically, you will see prices come down. Nobody has a solution for that. This letter certainly doesn't address that. Jerome Powell can't address that. That would come down to people like Miss Warren and those lawmakers to ease regulations on the builders in exchange for affordable housing. The letter does not state the relief consumers felt after rates come down, or does state that there was some relief after the 8%. And we've seen that. We talked about that yesterday. How much more of a home you can afford if you want to increase price, or how much lower your price. We did that whole analysis yesterday with the Redfin data on the hot sheet. All of those links are available, obviously, in BAMX. But it also noted how many people continue to struggle with the current rates. While the decision of the FOMC, which again meets today, we'll cover it all on Thursday morning after their press conference on Wednesday. With the decision of the FOMC to pause rate hikes in September, December, it was a first welcome step. But they're basically saying, there's more people that are being impacted. Given the impacts of the Fed's monetary policy in our country's housing ecosystem, the ripple effects for health outcomes in communities, wealth creation, and access to job and educational opportunities, we urge the Fed to reverse this aggressive hikes to the federal fund rate in 2024. So they want them to start ASAP. So here's outside of increased mortgage rates, which obviously impact the monthly payment. They said that this is impacting housing supply. Housing inventory shortage coupled with higher construction costs has kept home prices high. Yeah, so this is creating a higher construction cost for sure. I still think the biggest impact to construction costs, any builder, any developer is going to tell you this. I actually have never seen, and maybe they have, I could be totally wrong. I don't watch C-SPAN all the time, but I haven't seen, Capitol Hill bring up a whole bunch of developers and say, how do we get more affordable housing onto the market? How do we increase inventory in this market? I haven't heard that question asked to a developer specifically. Get Pulte, get Toll, get all these big box developers, get some medium sized and some small builders to represent those other communities that would be unrepresented by the big box develop. Get them all, get a panel of 10, 12, 20 builders, Capitol Hill, and ask them all. I know what they're going to say. Hey, ease up the regulations on us. When we buy a piece of land, don't make it so that we got to wait 2.5 years before we can put a damn shovel in the ground because you got so much red tape we have to jump through to start building. If we can have that trade-off, remember, if they're carrying land, especially on debt with these rates, they're just burning cash. They're going through plans and legal process and regulations, and that's costing them money. And who's ultimately paying for that? That home buyer on the other side. It's getting passed into the market. Okay. Jeremy said the same thing here on the hot sheet 5 months ago. And Jeremy said the same thing that the analogy that Grant Cardone said. I didn't seem to, I'm not saying that it would happen, Jeremy. I'm not saying it would happen. I'm saying that Grant Cardone, and now maybe a more esteemed real estate professional in his own right, Jeremy Knight, also saying that. I think rates come down, prices are going to boom pretty quickly. I can see the argument for the if it's a short period, 3 month. I don't know if prices would necessarily go down. I think staggering would be a better analogy. I'm willing to have Jeremy come on and repitch that at any moment. But the construction issue is more, we need more supply. Okay, so that's that one. Rental market. Yeah, this has led more people to remain in the rental market. It's also more affordable right now. Rental costs do remain high, but they're just always going to remain high. I mean, landlords and real estate investors are never looking to lower rents. They're always looking for ways to raise those. It's why if you know, I don't get this argument for everyday Americans that renting is a good option. It's like, hey, you can save $1,000 right now on your monthly payment. You can. My argument is, what is that average American doing with the additional $1,000? Are they a savvy investor in the stock market? No, we know that 60% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. Most Americans are not going to take that extra money and go and put it to work for themselves. If they're renting right now, if they're saving $1,000, $500 a month, renting versus owning, they're going to likely squander that money. Starbucks, out to eat, just bull crap, right? And I'm not saying that, I'm just saying that's what the data tells us. I'm not, speaking poorly about our fellow citizens. That's what the data shows us people do with the extra money. And then there is in the letter here, the impact on minorities, specifically the affordability crisis, disproportionately affects Black and Hispanic households with significant homeownership gaps compared to white household. Black and Hispanic homeowners have faced higher loan denial rates, smaller loan amounts, and higher upfront fees, contributing to a wealth gap. Okay, so you can find more on that. There's more analysis there in that piece that I was referring to from nowbam.com. Good job from the BAM team getting that up early this morning, as this was late last night, early this morning release here. And you can see the entire letter. Also, we've got linked up into BAMX. I mean, listen, to their credit, I don't know who wrote the letter from Warren's team or from one of these other, but they have some significant sources here. Reuters, Terra Siegel, New York Times, Federal Reserve as a source, Reuters, CNBC, CNN, Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, Business Insider. Business Insider is kind of a rag, but they source them. Harvard rather, CNBC, Harvard, Realtor, speaking about NAR there, Marketplace. So tons of 22 different sources here. These are the four lawmakers: Elizabeth Warren again, John Hickenlooper. These are all U.S. senators. Jackie Rosen, and then Sheldon Whitehouse. Sheldon Whitehouse, by the way, what a name for a U.S. senator. Maybe ambitions to go to the White House. Couldn't think of a better last name for somebody in politics than Whitehouse. So hats off to you, Sheldon. Okay. S&P also came out with some with their release for their S&P Dow Jones indice. And this is for November. Obviously, Case-Shiller is seen as the gold standard. It's very diligent analysis of home prices, but it's 3 months old. So it's kind of useless by the time we get it, in my opinion. But it kind of confirms any of these other, or, I guess doesn't confirm other analysis that you see in real time. I like when we can get some real time data, but anyways, the S&P is not that. It is a lagging measure. The S&P CoreLogic Case-Shiller U.S. National Home Price NSA Index, covering all 9 U.S. Census divisions, reported a 5.1% annual gain for the month of November. Okay, that being said, 12 out of the 20 major metros in the U.S., according to Case-Shiller, reported month-over-month decreases in November in home prices. Okay, the S&P, it also indicated an increase from the previous month's rise. So previous month on the annual gain, going back to that, was 4.7. So annual gain in November was 5.1. They're calling, Case-Shiller is calling that the highest home value, the record home value ever. Okay, they're calling that the highest recorded. Okay, October to November, what was the peak in the U.S. for everybody that thought it was 22? There you go. Case-Shiller calling quarter four in 2023 with the rates skyrocketing for 12 to 18 months before that as the peak, the highest all-time level on U.S. home prices. So who would have thought that was going to be the case? You've also got information here that the 10-city composite and the 20-city composite also showed year-over-year increases 6.2 and 5.4. Detroit led the 20 cities with the highest year-over-year gain, reporting 8.2% as of November for year-over-year. San Diego was 8%. Portland experienced a 0.7% decrease for the third month, being the only city reporting lower prices compared to the same month in the previous year. Okay. For the first time since January 23, both U.S. National Index and the 20 city composite posted a 0.2% month over month decrease. Okay, so there you go. You had a 0.2% month over month decrease. Obviously, you're still seeing after the dip on the initial reaction to home prices. This is a dip in appreciation, not the home prices. Okay, so this is percentage appreciation here. The chart that you're seeing, we've seen it go up, and obviously at that 5.1% level year over year. Okay, here's another look at that. You've got the 20 city and the 10 city mixed in here. These will all be available on BAMX. This is the one I like to look at because this really shows you appreciation over time. You do see that dip right there on home values before they went back up and set a new all-time high just last quarter. There is some belief here, and you see this, according to Case-Shiller, this kind of rounding off here for this November being down 0.2%. There is some belief that we could have this double dip in home prices, that you could see potentially, a winter here where you have a little bit of a dip before prices go up. If Elizabeth Warren gets her way and we get those, I think that's all of our way. We all want to see that. You get those home price cuts, then you will see that dip be very, very short, obviously, if that happens. Okay, here's some interesting information here. The 2006 peak they have on the composite. So using their numbers here, their composite numbers, which right now we're sitting between 300 and 325. The 2006 peak nationally 184.61. 2012 trough was 134, and our current level on the Case-Shiller indice is 312. Okay, so percent up from that 2012 bottom, 132.9%. Percent up from the 2006 peak, 69.1%. So there you go. That's where we're sitting here with the all-time highs, according to Case-Shiller. Here's the 20 city composite. I won't go through all of them. I'll point out that Portland is the only one with a 1-year change in the negatives at negative 0.7. You see Atlanta there at 5.9% increase, Boston at 7.1% increase, New York 7.4%, Chicago at 7% increase. Tampa's only showing a 3.4% increase. We see bigger numbers on other reporting measures. So there you go. Case-Shiller, the gold standard of home price, has reported November down 0.2% month over month, but year over year gains reporting at 5.1%. The FHFA, and maybe my favorite charts, which we'll put all of these available into BAMX, also had their index released as well. Here's the monthly house price index for the U.S. from 1991 to the present. I love showing this one because they break down the compound annual growth rate since January 91. That's at 4.4%. The compound annual growth rate since January 2000, 4.8%. On their updated index here, and the compound annual growth rate since January 2012, 7.5%. This one to me is just such a perfect chart to send to that home buyer who's listening to somebody who says, home prices are going to go down in a big way. Don't buy, they're thinking about if I buy this house, am I going to get hurt in 5, 7, 10 years? This one kind of explains to them, outside of a mortgage crisis, which there's many reasons why we're nowhere near that, real estate does nothing but go up and to the right. Now, FHFA house price index here says that U.S. home prices rose in November, increasing by 0.3%. Okay, so a difference of, negative 0.2% for Case-Shiller, up 0.3% for FHFA. Guess you could cut that in the middle and say November was flat, depending on where you want to go with that. The previously reported 0.3% increase in October remain unchanged. So sometimes they adjust those, but they kept that as is. And then they had a year over year in November up 6.6%, so higher than the 5.1% that Case-Shiller reported for national year over year. Seasonally adjusted monthly prices from October to November varied across the 9 census divisions, FHFA covering 9 census divisions, ranging from negative 0.2% in New England division to plus 0.7% in the Mountain division. Okay, we've got a quote here in the show notes as well from a supervisory economist in the FHFA's Division of Research and Statistics. U.S. house prices continue to appreciate in November, with year-over-year growth slightly above the historical average. All 9 census divisions experienced positive price appreciation over the 12 months, with 5 census divisions exhibiting deceleration compared to the price appreciation observed last year. There's also a bunch of these additional ways to break this down in the chart. Here's cumulative house price change relative to the 2007 peak for the U.S. So you hear a lot of words. I bought in 2007, lost my shirt. You only lost your shirt if you bought during this, or if you tried to sell during this time frame. Okay, and this is why it's important to understand how long you're going to be in the house. If you're in the house for 10 years, you can basically never lose. 10 years would have been here. You would have been up slightly. If you held on even more, you got all of these gains here to the right. It's about, if you bought at the very peak in 2007. Here's a look at 12-month house price changes prior year versus the most recent year, breaking down all 9 divisions as well as the U.S. All that data will be available for everybody inside of BAMX. Of course, use code HOT if you're not in BAMX already. It's how you get the most out of all of our content here at BAM. If you want to get even more out of what we're doing at BAM, then you should jump into this 5-day lead gen challenge. There was over 800 people in there yesterday. Maybe we could put the link into this description as well as in here in the live chat. Put it in the comments, put it everywhere, Haley. There's 4 more days you can jump in. You didn't have to be a part of yesterday. Over 800 people did yesterday. But basically you fill out this form and you're into the 5-day lead challenge. This is going to show you exactly how to get some new lead generation strategies into your business. So real estate agents, you should definitely jump into that. It was absolutely stunning yesterday how many people got value out of that. The reactions were crazy. And then if you haven't done so already, make sure you're ready for next week's BAM Pro Bowl. This is absolutely free as well. That's from 12 to 3 on Wednesday of next week. Sirhan, Dingra, Childers, Pantana, Gary Gold, Garofalo, Mary Lee, Jimmy Mackin, myself, the Broke Agent, Actually Agents, as well as a whole bunch of Super Bowl-like commercials, halftime show, post-game show, all of that. BAM Pro Bowl. Make sure you sign up for that as well if you haven't done so already. We've got a real word going up here on the main channel at 2 p.m. today. I will see you guys over there. And until then, toodaloo.